quoting from the government here. If I had said this myself, you would have thought it was outlandish, but this is the government's own predictions about how bad things are headed right now.
Something's coming out of the closet. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. It's a skeleton that's coming out of the closet, a big skeleton that Mark Carney didn't want anyone to see. It's a report coming from the Privy Council. This is one of the highest offices in the government of Mark Carney's current government, saying that in 15 years, Canada will be doomed on our current liberal trajectory. We also have Mark Carney's costed plan getting called out, and he gets humiliated by another economist scrutinizing his plan. Mark Carney throws a tantrum. We got some other stuff. Let's jump into this. So starting off this one, we've got David Jacobs posting this, another Main Street poll. This is neck and neck, 40 to 40%. But what's interesting is the Bloc has recaptured their 6%. So the more Bloc recaptures their supporters in Quebec, the more that eats into the Liberals. Got a post here I thought was interesting. It says, reading the full CPC platform, Poilievre has pledged to stop foreign governments and corporations from buying up Canadian farmland and report on how much farmland is already owned by foreign governments and foreign corporations. First time I hear that, what do you think? This is happening a lot in Canada. China's buying up our farmland, our factories. They buy up big office towers in downtown Vancouver, parkades, you name it. They buy everything. As this guy here, Matthew, has posted, Chinese owned farmland in America is quite a thing too. This is a lot of land. I think China should be outright banned from buying anything in Canada, and they should be forced to sell that stuff because they are hostile. They're trying to sway our elections. They are not a friendly regime to our country. They should not have anything to do with our country. They should have no ownership of anything in our country. We can't buy stuff in their country. Why should they own anything in ours? Pierre Poilievre has come up with his costed plan, and a bunch of Liberals are now having meltdowns. Pierre Poilievre pledges ban on new taxes and costed platform that projects $14 billion deficit in 4 years. Pierre's plan here is a real plan to get our deficit down, where Mark Carney is just going to continually jack up our deficit. Canada first, foreign aid for other countries at the expense of Canadians is bullcrap. Exactly. We got Poo-Poo Pants Mark Miller saying Pierre Poilievre's irresponsible dog's breakfast of a financial platform, a costing disaster. These guys are hilarious. This looks good to me. Let's get rid of the, says revenue gain from repealing no more pipelines law, revenue gain from appealing the clean electricity regulations, from EV mandate, from full carbon tax, from clean fuel regulations, from emissions cap, all this stuff. Get all that money back and have Canada be prosperous for once here, for a change. Cracking down on criminal tax evasion and overseas tax havens. Beautiful. This will be cracking down directly on Mark Carney. He's a corporate grifter, a tax dodger. And when he was questioned on this before, he just said, well, I'm serving the interests of the shareholders. He doesn't even care. He wants to run the country, yet he doesn't pay taxes, and his business that he works for, he's chairing, doesn't pay its fair share of taxes. It's despicable. Why anyone would vote for that is just beyond me. Axe the escalator tax on the stumbling juice, so every year they have a increase in tax on stumbling juice. It's just automatic. It's ridiculous. All this stuff's got to go. Great plan by Pierre. Let's see if people are smart enough to vote for it. He's also posted this one here. So projected debt levels, GDP. Once again, the Liberals cranking it up high here, and Conservatives bringing this down year after year. It'll take them 2 terms to fix Canada, essentially. In other news, we've got Olivia Chow dressed up like a buffoon. Got this one from Mario. It says, remember what happened mainstream media polls predicted in the US? We'll see what happens here. I mean, that's quite a difference there, isn't it? Does this chart look familiar? This was the American election. This does look familiar, doesn't it? But this is a little bit different because there's a bunch of people who just didn't want to vote for Justin Trudeau because he was childish. And now they've gone back to Mark Carney because he looks like a grown-up in the room versus Trudeau's antics that were turning a lot of people off the Liberal Party. So a little bit different. But yes, there is that Kamala bump. Mark Carney, same bump. He's going down now. Looking at the polling graph in Canada is just insane, considering the Liberals' record is just horrendous over the last 10 years, and people just throw all of that out the window and not using any logic whatsoever, thinking a banker is going to save Canada. Next up, coming from the Globe and Mail, we've got a record 7.3 million people who have voted in advance polls, says Elections Canada. This is unbelievable, but are we surprised? No. I mean, Canadians want change because our country sucks right now under the Liberals. Got this one from Table Salt. It says Harper ran a $55 billion deficit in 2009 after 465 banks collapsed in the United States and sparked a global financial crisis. Carney's going to borrow $250 billion because of a couple 25% tariffs from one country on selected items. This is so well worded. Carney is out of control. He really is. All his actions point towards him inflating the value of Brookfield's stock, which he has 400,000 stock options on that he'll get stinking rich from. Carney is dangerous. He knows damn well the best way to diversify our trade away from U.S. pipelines, but he won't repeal C-69. No, he won't. He doesn't want that to interfere with Interpipeline, a pipeline owned by Brookfield. It goes against his assets. He'll take our home equity to pay for his agenda. I wouldn't be surprised. Got Mark Carney here, throwing a tantrum, a full-blown tantrum today, across multiple clips.
I've spent a long time in the private sector. I know that markets in the private sector is some of the most powerful instruments that we've ever created, and that they can serve many goods and create many solutions. But they also are indifferent to suffering and can be blind to our greatest needs. And I also know from long experience that markets, private sector freezes in a crisis. You see, the difference is that markets don't have values, people do. And we choose. We choose.
No, the difference is markets don't create crisis, people do. Mark Carney desperately wants this to be a crisis because the Liberals' track record is so abysmal they have nothing to run on. If somebody tallied the amount of times he said crisis in the last month, it would probably be off the charts.
We choose, you choose, we choose whether and how to close the gap between what the market prices and what we value.
So he just goes on to babble some more. Now jumping over to the CBC broadcast, there's a little bit of French and then mostly English here. Listen to this. This picks up where Mark Carney's asked about Pierre Poilievre's platform, which was checked over and vetted by multiple people, including an economist. Mark Carney is challenged on his platform and how he has reckless spending. That's where we see volcanic temper Mark Carney come out.
There's a phantom growth that comes from the sky in his platform that arrives and changes his numbers, even though he doesn't have a plan to fight against President Trump. He also has a tax cut, a bring-it-home tax cut that never comes home. It doesn't arrive until year 4 and 5, right when we see the need of Canadians. Our tax cut compared to his plan, I'll give you one number, is 4 times larger this year. Is 4 times larger. These numbers are a joke.
You know, it's a joke is when people make these promises like this, like David Eby, who promised everyone in British Columbia $1,000 cash, and immediately after the election, he gave his own caucus all a raise and then took away that $1,000 cash from all British Columbians, giving us nothing, hanging out Canadians to dry. Pierre Poilievre has a real plan to fix the problems the Liberals have brought in the last 10 years.
We aren't in a joke. We are in the worst crisis of our lives.
Vous dites que vous avez un plan responsable.
You say that you have a responsible plan, but at the same time, when someone like Trevor Trooms is saying of your plan that the fiscal direction you're proposing is unsustainable for Canada potentially, what do you think of that? Well, I have a lot of experience as an economist and as an economic manager. We have a prudent plan, not assumptions. There is no increase in the debt to GDP ratio. There's a reduction of the government deficit in relation to the size of the economy. Also, we are bringing down the great rate of growth of government spending from 9% to 2% with very prudent assumptions. And essentially, this is a plan that will accelerate economic growth here in Canada, a plan that will make us strong in relation to the United States, where the economy will weaken. So Trevor Tombe is wrong, in your opinion. Yes, I have more experience than he does, and it's important to state that.
Carney's head there's looking pretty big. This guy's got just as big an ego as Justin Trudeau.
I'd like to follow up on that. Just if you've got an economist like Trevor Tombe saying that your plan is unsustainable, is just that, is there an argument that if Pierre Poilievre is trying to bring down spending, bring down the deficit, that his plan is more fiscally responsible than yours?
Okay, there's one thing that you can write on a paper, there's another thing that will happen in the economy, okay? So our plan, to be clear, is focused on investment and growing this economy. All of the spending, all of the investment in years 3 and 4 are for growing the economy. We are creating $500 billion of investment in this economy over the course of the next 4 years. That sounds like an enormous number. It is an enormous number. And the vast, vast majority of that investment comes from companies like Marmon. Our big investments in clean and conventional energy are...
Clean energy like Brookfield offers, which will jack up those stock options you have, Mark. You know those 400,000 shares of stock options you have in Brookfield? How is this any different? All of his is written down on a piece of paper, but because it comes out of his mouth, it's not. Because it comes out of his mouth, it'll be true.
Our investments in auto, our investments in housing and beyond from the private sector, but with a clear...
Yeah, Brookfield through Modulaire Group. We got it. It'll increase your stock options. You'll get more rich from it.
Directional plan. The conservative plan makes it up. It literally makes it up. It says that growth will come from somewhere, even though there's no plan to address the biggest risk to our economy, the U.S., even though their reductions in spending don't appear.
Carney is grasping at straws here. Look at this guy.
This is a real crisis, a real situation. The question is, within a week's time, who's going to be negotiating with President Trump and who's going to be managing the finances of this country? It's going to be François-Philippe Champagne and myself and our team. Or is it going to be a group that made it up on a napkin, released it a couple of days before the election, and has never taken responsibility for these types of decisions in the past? That's the...
Are you kidding me? Haven't taken responsibility? You guys destroyed our country. And he has the audacity to say that. People are sleeping in tents. 1 in 4 people going to food banks. 360,000 people went to that one food bank I showed on the channel just a couple of days ago in a single month when normally they'd only get 60,000 visits in a month. That's a 6 times increase. Take responsibility. Unbelievable this guy is. If this guy wins, our country is toast. And we know that because the Privy Council came out with a report showing exactly that. So moving over to Pierre Poilievre's press conference, he talks about this Privy Council report. This is coming from our government, Mark Carney's government. Canada is on the brink of collapse right now.
Just a week ago, we learned that one of the departments of the government, the Privy Council office, has made some very depressing predictions about the way the country is headed after a decade of Liberal rule. I'm going to quote directly from this Privy Council report. In 2040, upward mobility is almost unheard of in Canada, they predict. Hardly anyone believes they can build a better life for themselves or their children through their own efforts, and many worry about sliding down the social order. It forecasts more people may struggle to afford rent, bills, and groceries. Resulting stress could worsen mental health challenges. This would increase demand for social services. And then there's some specific forecasts that the current Liberal government is making about our future. In 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many. Inequality between those who rent and those who own has become a key driver of social, economic, and political conflict. The report goes on to say that people may lose faith in the Canadian project altogether. It forecasts that many will leave the country to avoid this rising cost and declining opportunity. And they believe that it will lead to a mental health crisis. More people will emigrate to jurisdictions where they believe upward mobility and or higher standards of living are easier to obtain.
All it will take is Donald Trump to say, you know what, anyone who's a pipe fitter, a welder, a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, electricians, plumbers, scientists, professors, anyone who will contribute to the GDP of America, give away easy green cards to Canadians to come down to America, and you'll see the biggest brain drain that the world has ever seen, that Trump would likely say, because Canadians know prosperity isn't coming to Canada right now. We need to switch our government. The government doesn't switch, the people will switch.
Quote, if young workers leave Canada, it may become harder to pay for the systems that support a growing number of older people. It says things are so bad that, and this is a quote, I'm quoting from the government here. If I had said this myself, you would have thought it was outlandish, but this is the government's own predictions about how bad things are headed right now. People may start to hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways because they can't afford groceries anymore. This isn't my prediction. This is where the country is headed if we continue down the Liberal track. It sounds incredible, something from a post-apocalyptic TV show like Fallout or The Last of Us, but this is the forecast from Prime Minister Carney's own government department, the Privy Council office. Now, Mr. Carney plans to continue the very policies that got us into this mess in the first place. In fact, he plans to go even further. $130 billion of additional spending above and beyond what Justin Trudeau had already promised will take the new debt that Liberals are projected to add over the next 4 years to $250 billion of inflationary, cost-driving spending that threatens our social programs and our future.
It's a bleak outlook for Canada right now if we don't win this election. So jumping ahead in this press conference, a reporter brings this back up because it's such an important topic.
I would be remiss as a reporter to not talk about what you talked about. And I want to talk about the platform, but just before that, you mentioned about this report out of the Privy Council.
Yeah.
Now, as a crime reporter, if you will, when I hear something like that, I cannot believe what I've heard. And it's such a stark contrast to what you talked about in your platform. But I do want to go back, if you can address that, how that's going to help fix it. But that is the most negative thing in my 40 years in journalism that I've ever heard about Canada. I don't see it too many places in the media, and I think it can't be glossed over. So I'd like to talk about that and how you're going to fix that if you win on next week.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm shocked that, like, this is not an interest group or an opinion columnist or even a think tank that has put out this report. It is not even just a government department. It is the Prime Minister's personal department. Like, I think somebody has to ask Mark Carney, has he seen this report? His department wrote it. And what they are anticipating on the current trajectory is a total meltdown, a societal breakdown in Canada if we stay on the current track. Why this isn't blazing the front pages of every news outlet in the country right now is beyond me. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, it blows my mind. What they're actually saying is that, I'm just going to read some of these. More people, this is for the future. It's not enough for Mr. Carney to say, oh, well, the last 10 years is in the past, forget about it. Stop bothering me about the past, he will say. This is the predicted future his department foresees for Canada. More people may struggle to afford rent, bills, or groceries. The resulting stress could worsen mental health challenges. This would increase demand on social services. In 2040, upward social mobility is almost unheard of in Canada. Hardly anyone believes that they can build a better life for themselves or their children through their own efforts. Many worry about sliding down the social order. In 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many.
Good on that reporter for bringing that back up. This should be broadcasted across Canada right now, but that wouldn't be good for Mark Carney, and the mainstream media are trying their best to help him out. Otherwise, I challenge them to do so. I was showing that directly off of Cpac, but let's just take a look. This is blowing up on X right now. See what the people are saying. Because if you put it in the news, you don't get a Liberal bonus at the end of the election. So there's a whole bunch of people who want to download the report, but it can't be shared on Facebook because of the news ban. Like, we have censorship everywhere. It's ridiculous. Venezuela, as I predicted, just stunning what Canadians will tolerate. Your own government, the one people are in love with, is telling you dumpster diving will be a common hobby in 15 years. Yet we've got elbows up as a thing right now, being the report will defame the Liberals. We can't have that. This is terrifying. This should be in the news cycle 24/7. So there you have it. The outcome of Canada. This really comes down to this election. Will Canadians wake up? Will Canadians get different sources of media that's not the CBC and realize that the Liberals are not for the Canadian people? Mark Carney's just going to push forward green initiatives that enriches Brookfield, enriches his 400,000 stock options he has with that company. He'll use big words. He'll say the word crisis and fundamental and catalyze a whole bunch of times. But that's not going to put food on the table for Canadians. Will Canadians wake up in time by election day?